Mike and Matt bringing back the mid to late 90s. Mike and Matt bringing back X-Files CCG.
Welcome back, everybody, to another informative episode of the X-Files CCG, MMS X-Files CCG to be specific. We have a lot more deep dives going on than we ever thought. Content just keeps stacking up, and we're welcomed once again by Mr. Brian Woodward. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Brian is, I believe you're in the FBI Witness Protection Program at this point, which is why we're only doing audio for Brian.
We've been having to do a lot of extra protection for our witnesses lately, haven't we, Mike?
So it's good to have you back, especially with all these wonderful things that have come to light recently. There's a lot of questions that have come up, and not just questions, but also a lot of gratitude coming your way because the first official editions of the 22364 set have now been printed and disseminated literally around the planet. And we have only you to thank for that. So, I mean, obviously the people that put it together, me, Stephen, Matt, Dax especially, thank you. But it wouldn't have been at all possible to get what we have without your help, Brian. So a huge thank you is in order.
I was really surprised that it actually went that far. I didn't know that there was a Dax out there that would do all that hard work with creating those cards. So,
oh yeah, he's definitely a hard worker, and just the stuff that you've sent me today begs the possibility of even another interview after this because man, this packet is just chock full. But we'll try and stick to. What we already have, right, Stephen?
Oh, yeah, because we already have a lot of questions, some of which are coming off of our interview with Lynette Schmidt. But a lot of it, Brian, we're interested in talking to you about the time in which you were part of the playtesting specifically for the X-Files collectible card game. And we have, as you know from the questions we sent you beforehand, we have quite a few questions, and we're hoping you could talk to us a bit about that. Let's say, how did it differ from just a traditional X-Files, how did it differ from a typical game of X-Files CCG? Were you guys playing a game straight through, or were you doing like some short runs through with specific phases with certain cards? Like, tell us a little bit about how the process worked.
well, I think first what we did is just kind of look at them and see if they made sense to us, right? I mean, when we first got them, we were just happy to be play testers and for this game that no one knew about. We're the only one, only the play testers knew initially that this even was going to exist, right? It hadn't even been advertised or anything yet. And I don't know, I think we initially just looked at the cards and I've always been a person wanting to see, does this make sense in the story, right? Which is, what I brought to the stuff like, doing the other games later on. And Dave has always been the mechanics. And it was just the two of us at first. When we had comments or changes or whatever, I had like this red ink pen, and I'd write them on those little black and white cards. And my comments, but I think we called or faxed them. Maybe we mailed some of the stuff, but I think we called or faxed most of the info that we had. Our comments, whatever they were, and they would just periodically send us another brick of cards with changes or whatever. And, we tried those out, and play games. We did try to play games with those little black and white cards.
Yeah, a lot of those did have some markings on them that you were gracious enough to send, and again, thank you for doing that, because there's certain people that jumped at the chance to get some of those, and in doing so, we were able to kind of fundraise getting Dax over to England, actually, or to to Minneapolis for FileFest.
Cool.
Yeah, it was. We did sort of like a fundraiser. I didn't set any price. We just said, hey, are you interested in helping Dax get to FileFest? If you are, and you'd like some of these cards, name your price. Let's share with everybody. So in doing so, like I said, we were able to get his plane ticket and booked, and he's coming back over to the States, man. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, man, it's just thank you again for that. You had mentioned that you were kind of playing with some other guys at the Advanced Rules and Procedures Manual. At the back, it lists like just a huge amount of names of the playtesters. Were there that many people playtesting like 1013 and 22364 as there were or were there fewer playtesters at that point?
Well, see, I only was a playtester for the original card, the original set that came out.
Okay.
Because we playtesters, and then we went to the infamous Gen Con that the Gen Con deck came from.
Oh yeah.
So after that, I don't remember how much more actual playtesting I did. The playtesters was us and our friends. There may have been a max of like 10 of us in the area when we lived in California, and then everybody else. I think a lot of those other names in there were probably friends of Duncan and those guys.
Okay, so I guess we'll ask about just Premiere playtesting then. So for the portion of the playtesting that you were doing, Brian, how many playtests did you guys do? Or from what you recall, how many did you guys do there?
Oh, how many games?
Yeah,
we played a lot. I remember spending a lot of time over at Dave's house, playing and talking about the game. But the other thing that Next Games had come out with prior to that was a football and a baseball game, Red Zone and Top of the Order. And so we played a lot of that. And that's actually initially how we got started with them. Is we asked to play test that. We didn't know that X-Files existed. We saw an ad or something and they were advertising for play testers, and we said, hey, we want to play test. So we played a lot. We played all of their games. We were really interested in them.
So to kind of follow up to that, I think that kind of answered the question, but in regards to the play testing, when you guys started play testing these games, like you said, you had just the original black and white cards. But how far would you get into the games? Would you typically be able to finish a full game, or would you get to a point where you're like, crap, this doesn't work, like we need to nix this and throw this out, and okay, let's start from scratch again? Or how long typically did they last, if you remember?
Some of them lasted like a really long time. So maybe we didn't get as many games through just because we're trying to figure out the rule. I mean, the rules changed. We had talked about this before. There was another place, right? There's only the three, right? The field and the hospital, right? And there was an additional place that the agents could be at, like a lab or something.
The field office crime lab.
Yeah, I think the crime lab.
And do you recall what specifics of the field office crime lab do you recall, like as far as the mechanics were concerned?
That was a lot of where the witness, the +1, +2 stuff that you guys were talking about before came in. That's why the witnesses were there with those particular bonuses. If someone had a +1 to computer, right? Because that's what when they were working with the lone gunman, right? It was Byers that was on the computer doing whatever, and that's where that stuff came from. I'm pretty sure that's what the idea was originally. I guess that kind of to streamline it a little bit, they took that part out, but left some of the mechanics in there. And I think I've mentioned in a couple of different interviews, how there was different clothing items. My favorite was always the leather jacket, and it just cracked me up that a leather jacket could give you a bonus to whatever, and I'm just like, okay, whatever, it is what it is. So, and there was actually, I don't know, it's probably not on the cards that I gave you. So, the ones that you had were not from the original, the premiere set, right?
No, you gave me the 1013. Yeah, and then I was gonna grab it here because I think it's.
Well, we do have a question regarding that, Brian, and this may be a little difficult to recall, but while the cards that you sent to Mike were predominantly 1013, along with what he's about to get in just a moment, what we were interested, though, is the 4 main agents, Mulder, Scully, Skinner, and Krychek. Their effects and even some to a certain degree, some of their skills were a little different than what we have on the commercially released cards. With Premiere and onward. So what we were wondering is if you like in the course while you were playtesting those Mulder, Scully, Skinner, Krychek agents, were those predating Premiere, or was there some potential for like revising their skills and effects for a later point?
I think there was an idea that maybe to have like a special ultra rare version of of an agent that would have a little bit different skills, maybe an older version, right, of an agent, more seasoned or something like that, and maybe even I'm not for sure, but maybe even with the special sets they were going to sell with the pewters, maybe the card in there would be slightly different. I mean, the pewters themselves aren't, as you've seen the Mulder one at least, so it's exactly the same as the one in the set. But I'm thinking that maybe they were planning on, having the agents grow up or something.
That's interesting because that kind of tracks, and I guess ultimately what we got were the ultra rare cards for those 4 agents, but with a different picture only in it. So I guess at some point they just opted to keep everything the same, but give them an alternate picture for the ultra rare version of it.
Right. Yeah, and it would have just I guess too many things to change, right? They didn't want to make too many changes. Plus, I mean, every time you change something, that's another thing that has to go through Fox to be approved, right? So,
yeah. So there's like keep it simple then. So which probably is a good thing because as we saw, Mike, as we talked about a couple episodes back, the additional effect for Skinner was so crazy that he was like. He could negate like a couple of event cards. Two government adversaries. I was like, wow, you can just forget about playing any adversaries against a team.
I know, right?
Skinner,
if you had like Skinner and Burke,
just forget about it. That's game right there. But yeah, no, I think that was a good thing dialing it back.
All right, so the question that I'm glad I get to ask this one because. This one's just been driving us nuts, man. It's really been driving us nuts. In the lower right-hand corner of all these playtest cards, we see some alphanumerical codes like 1A, 1B, 13B, or just simply the letter B. What are those, man? What do those mean?
I was looking at that, and you're not going to like my answer because I don't remember.
Oh,
the mystery goes on.
My best guess, and I mean you've been in contact with Duncan, he might know, but it's either where they were on the sheet or in the process, because everything was coded to like a picture. So the black and white card, right, didn't have the pictures on it. So the code could correlate to the picture that was supposed to go with that card, right?
Yeah.
Or for the B, if there's a B by itself, I would think that it would be something that's like with the basic set, right? And then for the other stuff, yeah. I mean, I really don't remember. And it probably wasn't something that uh, I was privy to as a playtester because it wouldn't have made any difference to me.
It's just like something that like you're playing the game and you're like, hey, so here's my note about this card. Hey, by the way, what does that number mean? Shut up. You don't need to know. Like, oh,
Yep, it's classified. So I have another question about the early days of the game, Brian. As you know, we ultimately got 9 different card types or suits with the finished game, the events, the witnesses, the bluffs, equipment, etc. Are you aware at any point was there a 10th card titled Secret? Or was that maybe a recurring keyword, a keyword secret that involved face down cards? Did you have any recollection of
Well,
that?
I think there were more than 9 types of cards initially. What the other kinds were off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
We saw a couple of indications of this in the playtest card that you sent. The playtest cards. There's one. It's mentioned, I think, on the Molder card, and then in the Scully set, there's a card called Discovering the Truth, where you can flip over a face down card, and then if that face down card contains the keyword secret, then you send it to the discard pile. So those are the only 2 indications that we had. There was either it was a keyword, a recurring keyword on there,
Isn't
or
there a mechanic for having it's a bluff,
right,
right?
yeah. So that's what we were kind of wondering, if that was something that just evolved into bluff cards, or they were some variant of the face down card mechanic that has served a completely different purpose. So that's kind of where we are with that, with just the 2 indications of that having at least been existing at some point.
Right. I mean, I'm pretty sure there were other categories. I remember the categories changing. What all of them were, I wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of my head.
Like we're going back to the field office crime lab you talked about. You know how you're saying the witnesses would be used with respect to that 4th section of the table. Was there anything like evidence cards or something like that would also be potentially been used for that section of the table?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of I think some of the equipment and stuff
Mm-hmm.
was evidence.
You also had it sent, Mike, not only some of the playtest cards for 1013, but we also got some playtest cards for the Scully expansion. In
somewhere.
addition to that, there were about 14. Yeah, there were about 14 cards in there that did not make the cut as far as what the final draft for the Scully set. There were about 14 cards, playtest cards, that were not included in there. Some of them were, and I'll just put them on the screen here for the the edited version. But Death of the Innocents, Cigarette Smoking Man Strikes Again, Legacy, Leather Jacket, Trench Coat. So those didn't make the Scully set. They didn't make 1013. So there, I guess. So I guess what I'm asking is that there maybe was a point in which those had been considered for inclusion but weren't, but maybe for some reason they were just axed, maybe because they weren't as mechanically sound, or there's some question about the effect.
At least for the coat,
But,
at least for the jacket and stuff. Yeah, that whole mechanic was thrown out.
Okay, so to your recollection, like what sort of criteria do you think, or do you recall, usually prevented one of these playtest cards from being included in the official sets? Do you recall any cards that, besides the ones I mentioned, that may not have made the cut? And if so, do you recall what the reason would have been?
Not from the premiere set. No, I don't remember. Ones in particular that were made. Different cards, and just like any game, right? The name of the card will change. Like the Gen Con set, right, has Scully's Dream, and that changed when the actual premiere set was printed and released, right? So there was stuff like that. I mean, there was a lot of iterations we went through. I just remember getting a few different bricks with changes, and as the rules changed, right, then cards had to change or cards had to be dropped.
Yeah, that perfectly ties in with the next question. Ironically enough, is like a perfect example of some changes. For example, the card that's caught between a rock and a hard place, which I thought was brilliant, by the way, in the 1013 set, was actually changed to philosophical question, which is just, well, I don't like it. I think it's dumb. But when you had these cards, you're obviously writing, like, hey, this works or change this. Did you have any say? Could you, cross out the title of the card and be like, this is dumb,
I could make that comment.
Did you have any
It doesn't mean that would necessarily happen, but yeah, I mean, I didn't hold back on anything. I mean, I was especially big on quotes and stuff too, Man, I think I know where those are now, and who knows if anybody's going to see them again. A lot of the premiere ones that I had, marked up.
What were you commenting on, or what were you writing down on the cards with respect to the quotes?
Either it didn't match or they got it wrong.
You're like, this is not how it was in the episode. That they didn't say it that way. Is that like that's what you mean?
Yeah, that kind of stuff. They didn't. That's not how they said it. Or you cut part of this off, and it doesn't make any sense the way it's written, or something like that.
Speaking as a lazy person, okay, I think those created cards for truth were just about the laziest example of just like, okay, like add a card. We need to add just tracking the killer. Just, okay, lockpick. I don't know, come up with a quote. Like, Brother Martin is attracted to you. What? Okay, sure. Like, and they were busting them out so quickly to just get them out at the last minute. That again, being a lazy person, I could be like,
you might have come up with tracking the
like
killer had you been there at that point in time, huh, Mike? You're admitting it here.
It's possible. It's possible. I mean, if I'm sitting in front of a computer and they're like, "Hey, Preeny, do you get those extra sites done?" I'm like, I don't. Yeah, I guess.
Brian, to come back to what you're saying
killer.
About,
here you go. I'm going
whether
home.
Or not, we ever get a chance to cast our eyes on those premiere and Truth Is Out There cards, I would very much like to see if there was potentially an alternate title for tracking the killer, to see if maybe they had something else, and then to wonder, well, was that the better title or wasn't it?
They probably had a list, right? Maybe if there was, how many new cards were in the blue one, in the blue set?
30, right? 30, right?
30.
Yeah, I think
so. They probably had. I'm just guessing here. They probably had 100. Those were, the 30, not just best but easiest to make, right? This is a picture we already have, or this is a picture they're not going to be able to argue with, right? and the difference between having just a picture of a lockpick or a picture of Scully's cross necklace. You know, which one is going to get through with the least amount of issues?
It's really interesting to really understand how the part of the brainstorming process was tied into what was acceptable, and that's not something that I and those of us who are making fan main cards now will understand as part of the creation process. Is we have to factor in, is Chris Carter going to be okay with this?
Exactly.
Okay.
Stephen, this is what Brian sent me. It's a complete set of Premiere. And it has post-it notes and different notes, handwritten notes. And in this case, this is a page of witnesses. And you'll notice that of this page, 4 witnesses are being given the axe.
My man,
but if
Kevin.
you'll notice in the middle, a card gets to
So
stay.
is there just an X on the post-its? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and there's some other notes in here that say, bring down 2 RP and
the thing I
-2
just sent you,
minus
right?
2
Weren't there some of the
observation,
pictures of like
rewrite,
the
change.
alternate versions of Langley and stuff like that?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was curious about that because you sent these. I
Whoa.
just
That
got
was
these.
for the new version of it. That's stuff that
Whoa.
Lynette made up. This is what it's going to look like, and then we need a picture in the rule book. So that's what's going to be
Okay.
placeholders for this. This is what the witness card's going to look like now, or whatever.
What's really interesting about these is I've seen somewhere, I can't remember where, but I've seen this version of Langley before. And I had always, as well as everybody else, had always been under the assertion that this was what an original pre-Gen Con card looked like. But what you're saying now is this is after,
And are
this
the
is what the
keywords,
simplified
what are the keywords on
game
there?
was going to look like.
No keywords at all? Okay. Interesting.
No keywords.
Because I know the keywords were
do not
being
exist.
significantly reduced for the simplified version as well. We were not going to have, like, basically the agents were only going to have, like, whether they were skeptic or believer, and that was it.
Right.
So, Brian, are these the only official, not official, but sort of official printed versions of these cards that ever existed on just these
Oh no, there was no
paper?
cards
Or
made.
are there
No,
actual
because
printed cards out there somewhere?
The rule book never got printed. I mean, the sheets that I was working on was this. I can't even think of the size. It was huge pieces of paper. It was blown up. I think it was still near the end or in the middle of working it is when we got the notice that there's no way in hell 1013 will work with us again. There was no reason for me to work on it anymore after that.
So yeah, we got a big question for you, Brian. This one is coming off of the heels of our interview with Lynette.
So we recently spoke to Lynette Schmidt, and we learned quite a few things from her that we previously had no idea about. At any time, were you aware that there was going to be a cigarette smoking man?
I do remember that. Yeah, the cigarette smoking man was. I thought, don't you guys have? Someone had a mock-up of it. I thought you guys had seen that or something like that. There was a third mock-up. There was one for the cigarette smoking man. I'm pretty sure.
Well, we did see the black and white printings of the cards for Mulder, Scully, and then for the cigarette smoking man X-File. Lynette had showed us a picture of them in black and white, which I guess were going, were to help with the translation from card to pewter, apparently.
Yeah, but as far as we knew, no actual.
There was a rumor that there was one. I can't say for sure because I never saw it.
So let's move along to the time that you were with Journeyman Press, Brian. A recent discovery that I made was that you, along with David May, were part of the playtesting for Todd Breitenstein's Zombies game, because I hadn't realized that the Zombies game was originally a Journeyman product, because I bought the second edition, which by that point it was with Twilight Creations. But all this time, you and David May, your names were listed on the 3-page rule sheet that's included in the game, and so it was only a recent revelation of mine that you guys were a part of that as well. And so, what can you tell us, Brian, about your experience with playtesting Zombies?
Okay, it's funny that you say it that way, because, and he might say I'm wrong, but the majority of the idea for Zombies and the original design of Zombies was actually Dave May. Okay, we did play test it, but I mean, we all kind of worked on the different stuff. I mean, like Dave had his hands in all of the games, probably except for like eBay and Peasantry, but he was heavily involved in all the other ones.
Beginning. So here's my question for you. And I don't think we've ever asked you this question. I think it's a fabulous question. Stephen, thank you for coming up with it. It's just perfect way. What was the highlight? What was your favorite moment or series of moments with either USPC or Journeyman Press? Like, what contribution achievement do you look back on most fondly? Like, to just, yeah, I was there and I did this and it was awesome. What's the best time for you?
Just being asked to play test the game that day, I went through the roof. I mean, we were thinking, we wanted to play test this sports game they were working on, and then they told us X-Files, and I was such an X-Files fanatic by that point. Going to that first Gen Con where, we had Dean Hadland and Braidwood, right? And just even though we were working from morning until closing, showing off the game, we were having a blast.
I noticed this just happened to be sitting on the pile that you sent me, and just full disclosure, my battery just said it was about to die, so I may have to be done here, even against my wishes to stay. FYI, but I did notice you sent me the welcome recruits letter. And at the bottom, it's crossed out, but it says, if you really need to talk to someone about your gameplay question, call our customer response line Monday through Friday. And then it lists the number. Was that you?
Afterwards, originally that would have been that other guy that, like I said, I don't remember his name. The one that Dave and Dave talked about. I don't know the guy. He was gone by the time I got there.
Thanks again, Brian, for joining us and answering our questions. We really appreciate it. I know this stack that you just sent me here has so much more to go through, so we will definitely have more questions for you. So
sounds good.
We really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you for watching another episode of Matt, Mike, and Steven's X-Files CCG.